Thank you. I'm told that your medium of instruction is in English and there are people from Tamil Nadu. So I'll speak in English instead of Hindi. The topic is politics with principle. Politics in Sanskrit is Rajniti, and Rajniti means Niti for Raj, which means policy for governance. That should be politics, the meaning of politics. That is the making of policy for governance of a country. And naturally that would mean objectives of that policy, the priorities that should be there for politics, that policy, and finally the strategy of achieving those objectives. So politics defined simply means a policy for governance. Now the question is, in the process of getting power to govern, what is the methodology that you will use? And that is where the question of principle comes. Principles are morally and socially desirable rules, methods, and so on. What is the right way of doing it? Not by any means. That is where the word politics has got a dirty word. By itself, politics is not a dirty word. After all, it is policy for governance. But the method of getting power to make the policy, if that is unprincipled, which means it does not follow moral and socially desirable rules, then you have politics without principle. But if you do, then you have politics with principle. Now, question then becomes, principles are the means to achieve the end of politics. So Gandhiji had said very clearly, means and ends are interchangeable. Because many people said, like Subhash Chandra Bose, means are not important. We must get freedom, the end of freedom. The end is freedom, means doesn't matter. Gandhiji disagreed. He said, no, if you get by bad means, then the end will be also wrong. And therefore means and ends are interchangeable. So that's the real question, whether the means and ends are interchangeable or not. Now you see, there were great thinkers, not only Subhash Chandra Bose, but Machiavelli in Germany, who clearly said that whatever means you use, the end must be achieved. And there are many religious philosophies also which advocate that, but not the great Sanatana Dharma where this is advocated. In Sanatana Dharma, everywhere they talk about dharma. Dharma is an integral part of politics. And therefore, we must say as Indians, if you're going to do politics, it must be with principle. And that principle has to be cleverly or clearly defined. Now you see, when Rama in Ramayana kills Bali, how does he kill Bali? He tells Sugriv, I can't tell the difference between you and Bali, so you wear a mala and I will hide behind a tree and kill him. And so Rama kills Bali that way. But before dying, Bali tells Rama, what kind of a coward you are. You call yourself Maryada Purushottam, or people call you Maryada Purushottam, you are a Kshatriya, and instead of coming straight before me and fighting me in a battle, you hide behind a tree, you tell Sugriv to wear a mala to distinguish himself, and then you kill me. Where is your morality? There Rama says, morality you have no right to talk about. You stole the kingdom of Sugriv and you stole his wife also. Who are you to now talk about morality? So now you see, we in our country, we talk about dharma and so on. But then that dharma is only amongst those of us who believe in dharma. Those who act on the basis of adharma, there we do not apply the same principles. And the same thing happened when Krishna was educating Arjuna. Because in the open court, in the open Rajya Sabha of Dhritarashtra, Draupadi's sari was being disrobed by Dushasana. At that time, Bhishmacharya stood and watched. And he said, what can I do? He was like Manmohan Singh, what can I do? What can I do? These people lost the game of dice. They even staked their own wives on that. So they were legally bound to strip her because she became their property. So Krishna tells Bhishmacharya himself, because at one stage Krishna was so upset with Arjuna in the battle that when Bhishmacharya came charging and Arjuna still wasn't ready to get up, so he himself got down from the chariot and brought out his Sudarshan Chakra. That time Bhishmacharya said to him, oh great Krishna, going to kill me, I will go to heaven straight away. But first let me ask you, what happened to your pledge? That you said, I will not fight in the battle, I will only I'll be the Sarathi for Arjun in the Rath. That time Krishna says, who are you to talk about morality? When in the open court, in the open Rajya Sabha, you watched a defenseless female couldn't prevent her from being stripped. You have no right to talk about morality. So throughout in our scriptural literature, we have made it very clear, dharma is only between two dharmic individuals, but not between adharma. Tomorrow, some terrorist comes to kill you, you can't say dharma. Constitution, Article 32. There you have to protect your society. And that is why, even in the end, after losing the battle, Bhishmacharya educates Arjuna and says there is something called apad dharma, where it is when there is a social consensus that in order to fight an adharmic enemy, you will not follow principles. You will not follow the principles which you will follow amongst yourself. So therefore, there is a real question today, because there is a contradiction that will arise from occasion to occasion between politics and principle, a contradiction. And we cannot say that because there is a contradiction we will prefer politics, or because there is a contradiction we will only go with principle. No. You will try to resolve that conflict. And that's how Krishna did it, that's what Rama did. And they defined it under what circumstances you will do it. So to that extent, we have to modify Mahatma Gandhi's view that ends and means are convertible. It depends on your enemy. If he is part of your society, part of your family, then yes, it must be by principle, it must be by dharma. But if he is not, he's come to destroy your society, then no dharma. We used to have a dharma that if you lose the battle and you apologize, you will be forgiven. That used to be a dharma between Rajas fighting between two within our country. Muhammad Ghori came and he was defeated 16 times by Prithviraj Chauhan. And he forgave him each time. On the 17th time, Muhammad Ghori got the support of Prithviraj Chauhan's father-in-law and defeated him. That is not dharma. You should not have even forgiven him more than once. Ghori should have been forgiven once. Next time he came, we should have given him, finished him off. But he didn't. That was a misutilization of the principle, the concept of principle. So it's easy to say politics and principle, we must be principle, but you must know how to use that principle. And that is what I would like to now elaborate for you. Now, sometimes people say that to get power you have to give up principle. I don't agree. Because by that method, slowly you will lose the power also. Today corruption is one big issue. What is corruption? It is making a decision against the merit by taking money illegally and secretly. That harms the society. Because that money comes and starts corroding your society. You get this money, what do? You put it in Switzerland bank. How to put it in Switzerland bank? You give it to a Hawala operator. He will take it to Dubai. From Dubai he will do a wire transfer. If you don't have a bank account, he will create a bank account for you also. And he will deposit it there. Now many politicians, ministers, they are doing like this. And they argue, no, we need money for elections and all, and we can't keep it here because it's not safe here, so we put it there. But what is the impact of it? When he puts the money through the Hawala man has to go through Dubai. That means the Hawala person has to be on good terms with Pakistan, particularly ISI of Pakistan. Otherwise he can't do business. Dubai is dominated by ISI. So therefore he has to report to Pakistan or the ISI for which minister he is depositing how much money in which bank. Now once ISI gets that information, they will blackmail our ministers. And today they are blackmailing our ministers. Because we see in decisions like Kasab, in Afzal Guru, Supreme Court said hang them. Still not hang them. They are waiting, delaying, because they are, large number of ministers today are afraid of Pakistan. There is an attack on Bombay. Not one, now, so many attacks. All innocent people killed. Mostly Gujaratis are being killed. Javeri Bazaar and all that. Some places Jains are being killed. And we don't retaliate. It's because of this fear. So you see, you did it without principle. You needed money. You collected money, put it in a foreign bank, and now you become blackmailable by your enemy. So therefore corruption is in fact a very dangerous thing. In this 2G I found that permission was given by the telecom minister, Mr. Raja, to two companies which should not have got license in the first place, to sell it to Etisalat and Telenor, two companies. But the Home Ministry had a report that Telenor is a Telenor and Etisalat are ISI controlled companies. And Telenor's equipment comes from the Chinese military. And that equipment, if it is used in India, can create cyber warfare with us. Supposing India and China are having a war, they can make our defense electronics fail. And yet it sold it. Originally I thought it was Raja who did it. But now I find that Raja was Buddhu, he didn't know. And it was Chidambaram who taught him. So, and Chidambaram being a lawyer and a crook, so crooked lawyers are the most dangerous people in the world. Once there was a football match going on in hell, and somebody kicked the ball very hard. The ball hit the wall, dividing heaven and hell, and it collapsed. So the heaven people came and told the hell people, hey, you've broken this wall, build it. So the hell people said, why we should build it? You are afraid of our coming there, we are not afraid of your coming here. So the heaven people said, Acha, it's like that, let us go to Brahma's court and argue this matter. So hell said, okay, we are ready. And the hell people searched their hell and collected their best lawyers and went to argue the matter. The heaven people went on searching, couldn't find a single lawyer. Because there were no lawyers in heaven. Well, my wife is a lawyer, so she should not hear this joke. So therefore, if this kind of unprincipled pursuit of power takes place, politics is done this way, then I am afraid that country will become very weak. That is why the old saying is, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And therefore, what is the system by which you can have politics with principle? First of all, let me make it clear, when I say politics with principle, it is only meant for our own country. When you are dealing with the enemies of your country, then it's a question of protection of the country. It's not a question of principle. So therefore, when I am discussing with you today, it is about how we deal with each other. The best system for politics with principle is democracy. Because you may not have it in a democracy, but if you have dictatorship, there is no scope whatsoever for politics with principle. You see that in so many dictatorships. See what has happened in Libya, see what has happened in Egypt, see what happened in Soviet Union when Stalin was there. See what's happening in China. Any system which does not practice democracy cannot have principle in dealing with its people. Only in a democracy you have a constitution, you have Supreme Court, you have so many other, you have a parliament, and opposition has a right to speak, etc. So first of all, let me say, In order to have politics with principle, the first thing you need is democracy. And therefore democracy is worth fighting. And your economic system should be market-based system, where everybody has a right to this thing. He doesn't have to depend on the minister for license and quota. We unfortunately, because Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated and Sardar Patel died too early, we had Jawaharlal Nehru who was fascinated with Russia. And he brought in the Soviet model. And all the corruption that took place, which led to unprincipled behavior, black money, misuse in elections, all started with that. With the selling of licenses in the black market and these quotas and so on. So therefore, democracy is one. Second is market economy. Market economy doesn't mean laissez-faire, you can do what you like. No. Market economy means the government has to be a regulator. It has to be an umpire. You can't have a cricket match without an umpire. You can't have a football match without an umpire. So you need an umpire. And the government must be there to see it. And the experience of the world shows that. When World War II was there, the Allies bombed Germany left, right and center and destroyed it completely. And then they partitioned Germany into two countries, East Germany and West Germany. East Germany adopted market economy and democracy. West Germany adopted market economy and democracy. And East Germany adopted the Soviet economic model and dictatorship. This was in 1945. In 1990, the Berlin Wall broke and the two countries became one. East Germany and West Germany became one country. Then people found out what a difference there is between East Germany and West Germany. West Germany had become a developed country. Same people as East Germans. But they became, because they adopted market economy and democracy, they became developed country. East Germany was backward. Even today it is backward. If you go to Germany and go to East Germany, you can see the difference. Same difference is there between North Korea and South Korea. If you compare the two, North Korea is dictatorship and Soviet model. And South Korea is democracy and market economy. To some extent you can say even China is different because they have adopted market economy and their economic prosperity is grown. For India also, we were going so slowly. Then economic reform came. And for economic reform, certainly the blueprints were prepared by me, but the implementing Prime Minister was Narasimha Rao. And the credit was given to Manmohan Singh. Because Sonia Gandhi didn't like Narasimha Rao. So now Manmohan Singh is Prime Minister, he cannot bring one single reform. As Finance Minister, he brought all this big reform. It was all because of Narasimha Rao, who took the blueprints from me. My government was there before. Chandrasekhar was Prime Minister. We got it already passed. Then Narasimha Rao's government came. He asked me also to help him, so he created a commission on GATT and WTO and made me chairman of it with the cabinet rank. And we implemented it. And India has grown. Previously, we only used to get ambassador car, and that too after 3 years waiting. Now you can get a car. You pay 15,000, you'll get Nano, and from Gujarat. So, therefore, this transformation took place in India also. So, I want young people to know, never ever say that democracy can't be made, cannot work. We have to make it work. Whatever problems are there with democracy and all, we have to go on correcting it, improving it. And now my opinion today, the laws of the country are sufficient to fight corruption. I have a disagreement with Anna Hazare only on this one point. I have respect for him as a person, not for his team. His team is full of Naxalites. I have no respect for that team. But Anna Hazare I have known because I was twice MP from Bombay, Ghatkopar region, Chembur, Ghatkopar, that area. And I was twice Lok Sabha from the Bombay, and therefore I knew Anna Hazare. But to say that unless there is a Lokpal bill, General Lokpal bill, passed by Parliament, no corruption can be fought, I don't agree. I have fought on 2G on this present law. And if there are fighters come up, even the system starts working. The same Supreme Court is delivering goods. I went to the trial court and told the trial court, I'm filing a complaint, which all of you know you can file. But I also told him prosecution will be done by me. So the judge said, how you can do prosecution? You're not a lawyer. Not only you're not a government appointed lawyer. CRPC says that you have to be a government appointed lawyer. Then only you can be considered as a prosecutor. I said, no, that may be CRPC, but in Prevention of Corruption Act, Section 5 says that the person who files the complaint, he can also be a lawyer. He can also be a prosecutor. So he said, read it out to me. I read it out. He said, nobody has told me this so far. Judge telling me this. It's a fact, there are so many things in our present law which our people don't study. So therefore I am saying to you that democracy, the first principle for having politics with principle would be that you must be committed to democracy with market economy. Then you see, the second way to bring principle is by decentralization. Vikendrikaran, as they say in Sanskrit. Power corrupts, so you have to go on decentralizing. To some extent, in democracy you decentralize because you have Supreme Court separate, you have Parliament separate, you have executive government separate. But you have to do it even socially. And this is what the Sanatana Dharma has done. Why was India considered maybe 600, 700 years ago as the most principled country, most honest country by visitors who came from abroad? People came from China, Farsian came, Yuan Chuang came. What did he say? What did they write? This is the most honest country. People are so principled here. Vasco da Gama came, he also wrote the same thing. Al-Biruni wrote the same thing. Mark Twain wrote the same thing. And today Transparency International says, as one of the young students just now said, puts us down as 95th country in honesty and principle. How did this change take place? And how is it that we were for thousands of years so honest? Farsian says that people, Hindustani people are so honest that if you leave anything behind in your house, they will chase you and find you and then return it to you. And that is because Sanatana Dharma. And what did Sanatana Dharma do? It devalued the importance of money. Making money was not bad, but importance of money was devalued. And this occurred to me first time when I went to get my PhD at Harvard. And my classmate who was sitting next to me in the class, an American student, asked me, I want to ask you one question. I said, what? He said, why you Indians are following Mahatma Gandhi? So I said, what is wrong with Mahatma Gandhi? He said, the man is not even properly dressed. How can he be your leader? Then I thought about it. Yes, he's right. Because in America and Europe and all, leaders are very well dressed. Suit, boot, and their shining shoes and all that. Why is it that we did not insist that Mahatma Gandhi should be properly dressed? He's just wearing a langoti and going around. So, I made me think. Then I said, what about the religious leaders? Yes, the Pope is dressed in satin gown and he's got jewels, he's got diamond necklace, ruby necklace, sapphire necklace. So there also. But in our country, all these Swamijis that you see, they are all very simply dressed in Bhagwa Kapda. And you have to respect them. And that is the mistake that Sita made. When Ravan came, he didn't come dressed like Ravan. He came in Bhagwa. And he insisted that she should cross the Lakshman Rekha. And she thought, oh, he's Pujaniya, he's a sadhu. I must, so she broke the rule and suffered for it. So sometimes people wear Bhagwa Kapda and fool you also. Many people tell me, why you are so harsh on Sonia Gandhi, poor woman, she wants to be a bahu, she wears a sari, she puts on sometimes a biddi and all that. So I said, learn from Ravan, don't go by dress. So what is it that made us respect Mahatma Gandhi? Sacrifice. Here's a barrister who had huge practice in South Africa also. Comes here and gives it all up. This sacrifice principle also applied to Jayaprakash Narayan. This sacrifice principle is also applying to Anna Hazare, a simple man. So, this sacrifice you will not find in other cultures. And that is, when you go back and study, how did we have politics with principle? And there, two Maharishis, Rishi Brigu and Rishi Bhardwaj, they discussed this. How can we make a society work on principle? And Brigu says it's only possible by decentralization of power. And power has got 4 dimensions. Dimension number 1 is knowledge. Knowledge is power. 2, weapons is power. If you have weapons, you get power. Money is power. You have money, you get power. Land in those days was power. So he said, if a society, all these 4 are distributed so that no one person has more than one of this. If you have knowledge, you cannot have weapons, you cannot have money, you cannot have land. And if you have weapons, then you cannot make policy. Policy has to be made with those with knowledge. And therefore, that's how the Varna system came. Brahmins, knowledge, pursued knowledge, but they did not have wealth, they did not have land, they did not have weapons. The king had the kingdom, but he could not make a decision when to go to war or what punishment should be given for a criminal. In Europe, yes, Europe the king could decide everything, but no, not in India. In the old Hindustan of India, there the king had to ask the advice of the learned people. If you made money, nothing wrong. But you will not get social status on that. Social status will be given to you only if you give donation, philanthropy. And same thing with land, you must produce for the people. And this was not connected with birth. Unfortunately, it is now connected with birth. That is why now Varna system has become useless. It's better to scrap it and call all ourselves Hindus and forget about whether we are Brahmins or Kshatriyas or whatever. Because you're not following the discipline of that. You cannot call yourself a Brahmin and be an executive in Bata Shoe Company or something like that, you see. If you are a professor, you become a Brahmin. So Dr. Ambedkar was a professor, he can be a Brahmin. And in fact, Valmiki was from the Dalit community. And he became Maharishi, wrote the Ramayana. Vedavyasa, who wrote Mahabharata, his mother was a fisherwoman. Kalidasa used to be hunting in the forest and cutting trees and the branches. And the Rishi of Rishis, Vishwamitra, his father and mother were Kshatriyas. No, not a question of the Brahmins. Only Brahmins are those who are born Brahmins. And if a Brahmin broke a law, then he would be punished, just like everybody else. Ravan was a Brahmin. And as I told the Ahmedabad audience the other day, Karunanidhi did not know that Ravan was a Brahmin, but he used to celebrate Ravan Leela. So I explained to him that Ravan was a Brahmin. He didn't believe. He said, no, he is a Dravidian and all these Aryans came from north and Rama came and killed him. I said, Rama was not a Brahmin. Rama was a Kshatriya. And Ravan also was not a Dravidian. That is, Dravidian means South Indian. Ravan was born in Noida near Delhi. And Mandodari was born in Meerut. Then he became jealous of Guber. So he came and conquered Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka was a very beautiful country in those days. Maybe it's still a beautiful country. And in fact, when Rama killed Ravan, then Lakshman told Rama, why go back to Ayodhya? We don't know what Bharat will do now. So let us stay here. Sita is also here. It's a lovely country. So then Rama said, no, the loveliest country is your motherland and nothing else, and therefore we'll go back. So anyway, I am saying that Ramchandraji was a Kshatriya. He killed Rama. The Brahmins did not say, oh, he's killed one of our Brahmins. Because he broke the law, he had to be killed. So that principle, you see, of decentralization of power. And Mahatma Gandhi comes as a Maharishi on that basis. Because he gave you knowledge, he built a whole new ideology of non-violence, and he had nothing for himself. This sacrifice principle is what brings clarity and cleanliness to politics. And that must come. Today, because of globalization, everybody wants to make money. For no reason at all. Some by hook or crook also. I once went to give a lecture at the IIM Bangalore. And there, I asked the students, you people have done competitive exams to come here, and you're going to get an MBA. Why you want to be an MBA? And 99% of the class said, because we want a good job. So I said, you're not interested in marketing theory, you're not interested in finance theory. No, that's all right, that is for passing exam. But you got an MBA, then tomorrow my parents can put an advertisement in Times of India matrimonial column, MBA, good dowry expected, girl must be beautiful. You know, this is all, this materialism has come. Sanatana Dharma had said materialism, yes, material prosperity is necessary. And India became the richest country in the world, by the way. But it should be spiritual growth, should take side by side. And there should be no attachment to money. When you have more money than you need, you give donation. That was the system we built, and that is why we had this principle politics. That's why you see these great tales of Mahabharata and Ramayana and how people conducted themselves. That is the meaning of Ram Rajya, where Ram gave up the kingdom because his father had given a vachan, had given a vow which he had to obey. So this thing has to come slowly, and it will take time. How do we go about it? First of all, our educational system is deficient in one area. And that is, we teach our students calculus, mathematics, physics. These are all called cognitive intelligence. Your IQ today measures only your cognitive intelligence. But that's not the only dimension of intelligence. There are other dimensions, which is now being taught in America in a big way, but is there in our Upanishads. The second dimension of intelligence is called emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is how to talk so that the other person gets converted to your point of view. In our own ancient days, we never converted anybody by force. We brought them over by argument. After Buddhism took over India, Adi Shankara went everywhere challenging people to debates. And in that debate, if he won, if Shankara won, then the other person converts to Hinduism, away from Buddhism. And if Shankara loses, then Shankara becomes a Buddhist. But Shankara never lost. All by discussion. You will not find this in the history of any other country. So therefore, there is emotional intelligence. How to argue in a way that the other person listens to your argument and converts. That has to be taught. It's a whole subject. The third thing is called social intelligence. That is how to work in such a way, how to use your intelligence in such a way that not only you are benefited, but society is also benefited. Here we think that a society can go to hell. If my house should be clean, and I'll put all the kuda and garbage in the front, on the street. That mentality we have. So this requires if you want to be a principled person, then you must have a social intelligence. I mustn't do anything which will hurt society. I should not send my money to Switzerland when the country needs resources. You know how much money is abroad in foreign bank accounts? 70 lakh crores. We'll bring it back, don't worry. Of which 100,000 crores. And if we bring it back, then for the next 25 years you won't have to pay any taxes at all. 110 new universities. So much money. All has gone slowly. So therefore, it's not only Raja who's got money there. There is one Delhi ki Rani also who's got a lot of money there. And she's got the most money. So, I am saying to you that this social intelligence has to be imbibed in our universities now. Fourth is moral intelligence. That's where dharma comes in. You do not do something which is immoral. You don't lie, you don't cheat, you don't do fraud. That is to come from inside. You see, we had these rules. Unfortunately, we use these rules even with foreigners. We said that morally speaking, battle should not take place at night. So we had a rule that the war, if one Raja declares war on another, then what will happen is that he has to fight only when the sun rises, and he has to retire back to his tents when the sun sets. Only in daylight the battle will take place. When the foreigner came, he came at night. And we were not prepared. Similarly, when we had a rule that you will not fight in the population areas, you will not fight in the agricultural fields, but you will fight only in the open Maidan, like in Kurukshetra. Or when Ravan had to fight Rama, he had to come out of his fort into the open Maidan. So that was the rule. These people who came, foreigners, they attacked your villages, they attacked your crops, they looted your country. Not prepared for that. And then of course I told you, if you ask for forgiveness after losing, give it all back and send him back. And Prithviraj Chauhan sent him 16 times. So these rules were only dharmic rules for our own people. That you must constantly understand. When you are dealing with foreigners, you are dealing with evil people, there is no question that politics has to be with principle. So therefore moral IQ, that is moral intelligence, has also been taught. Then there is something called environmental intelligence. That is, you must not do anything to destroy the mother nature. We worship nature. We worship the sun, we worship the rivers, we worship the mountains. No other religion worships these things. Because we know that the environment must be safe, otherwise we are all finished. And that environmental consciousness also we have to acquire when we are studying in universities. And finally, the most difficult, which is part of the Vedas actually, and that is called spiritual intelligence. Because the rishis said all the knowledge is in the cosmos. And if you can meditate and connect your mind to that cosmos, which now the Americans are calling as neural Wi-Fi. You know what Wi-Fi is? Neural means brain. So Wi-Fi. You connect to that cosmos, then all the knowledge will come to you. And that meditation teaches you that. Then you will be a complete person who will be able to work within the dharmic system to do your politics. And that ultimately therefore leads to what kind of India you want. India is what? That I got a passport, therefore I'm an Indian. Nah, that's no good. Nowadays they also forge the passport. So Indian is not that. Indian is one who connects with the past of India. There must be some connection. So I have said that you are an Indian, that is a Hindustani. If you are Hindu or your ancestors were Hindus. And I am telling you today, I've seen the studies on DNA. All Indians have the same DNA. All this Aryan Dravidian theory the British cooked up is all bogus. If it's being taught in your history class for examination's sake, please continue to repeat that, but once you leave college, give it up. There is no such thing as Aryan Dravidian. The word Arya, Max Muller changed it into Aryan, and Hitler took it up. Word Dravidian means southern region. It's a sandhi of two words, Tra and Vid. And Adi Shankara was the first one to use it. So the Dravidian is not a race. So I have been through these studies which are come. You can go to Google and write DNA and Indian people. You will get all the studies. We are all the same. And I tested it once. When Raj Thackeray was making big noise that we Marathis are losing jobs to these UP taxi drivers. And these UP walas should go. So I asked a friend of mine, you know Raj Thackeray, can you get me a sample of his hair? So he said, sure, next time he goes for a haircut, I'll go with him and get you a sample. So he gave me a sample. Then I gave a UP taxiwala 5 rupees and took a sample of his hair. Then I took it to a laboratory in Hyderabad and tested. Both the DNAs were the same. So I came and announced, saying that Raj Thackeray has also come from UP because his DNA is the same as the UP wala. And if he challenges me, let him come on the stage and give me a sample of his hair. I've got a mobile unit of DNA testing. Brahmins and scheduled caste also have the same DNA. There was no law which said that scheduled caste children have to be scheduled caste. Otherwise Valmiki would not have been Maharishi. Muslims and Indians or Hindus are also same DNA. So I am saying to the Muslim, you unite with us by saying that my ancestors are Hindus, you will become part of the family. But they get, and these mullahs get angry, no, we are from Ghori and Ghazni. Well, we created Pakistan for those who thought that they are descendants of Ghori and Ghazni. But if you in this country and you want to live with Hindus, what is your difficulty? This is a DNA. You contradict the DNA, I can understand. So maybe in the new UID cards, I think they should put DNA also in it. So that identity is necessary for principle, because then you will say, for my countrymen, I will not betray him. Then you get principle. My countrymen, I will defend him. 5 lakh Kashmiri Pandits have been driven out from Kashmir. Nobody talks about it. Because we don't have that feeling of Indian. We are Hindustanis. Our temples are being knocked down everywhere. Poor Hindus in Pakistan are even today suffering. We have no principle when it comes to that. And that is why we have surrendered to terrorists over and over again, because we don't have a concept of identity. So what should we do to bring this back? I would like the youth to now start thinking in fresh terms. You can have a career, no doubt. You must have a career. But don't have a career just because you get your good job. Have a career where you feel that this is something I want. I want to be an economist. That's why I'm studying economics. Or I want to be a lawyer. That's why I'm studying law. 2, you must learn to take risk. Because you cannot have principle if you can't take risk. If you take a principle stand, you may be thrown out somewhere. They will say, no, we don't like what you're doing. So you can't change your principle. And there you should have that courage. You see. And I'm telling you that I've seen in my life, whenever I took a stand on principle, ultimately something better happened. Once I had a big quarrel with the IIT director. Mr. Dogra was in your time too? Yeah. I caught him on corruption. And he was a friend of Indira Gandhi. So he told Indira Gandhi, he's thrown me out. So Indira Gandhi said, Acha, I will teach him a lesson. She removed me. I was a full professor. And one day I got a letter saying that you are terminated. When I told the authorities, how can you terminate me? They said, no, go fight in court. But within 3 years or 4 years, the Janata Party came to power and Morarji Desai said, I am appointing you on the board of governors of the very body which dismissed you in the first place. But I told Morarji, I'll have to sit with all those people who threw me out. He said, don't worry, I'm removing them also. I never knew that this will happen. But I took a principled stand. And I am saying to all of the youth people, don't think of these consequences. I'm all the time confronted with young people saying, what will happen if tomorrow the judge turns against you? And why are you worrying about that? Somebody was telling me, my wife is pregnant, what happens if the child born has a twisted nose and nobody wants to marry her or him? I said, don't have pregnancy then. I mean, you can't go on worrying about the future. This is a very bad, this is precisely where the principles are sacrificed. Because you worry about the future. Learn to take risk. Don't worry about the future. Do the right thing. And if you have faith in Bhagavad Gita, you will know that ultimately you will be rewarded. When, what form and all, God will decide. That spirit must come. And then only we can bring in this change. Politics is an essential part of running a society. We need good people. Many years ago, I was recruiting some people for membership at Bangalore. So one boy said, see, I am very keen to join Janata Party, but my parents are against my joining politics. Can you talk to my parents? I said, yes, I will talk to them. So I went to his parents' house and I told them, this young boy wants to join, why are you objecting? So he said, I said all kinds of things about politics. I said, yes, politics is bad, but it needs to be cleaned up. He said, no, this boy has to become an engineer, we have very heart is set on it. Then I said, then what will happen to our politics? He says, oh, you want somebody for politics? Take my second son, he's a useless fellow, he's a vagabond. You can have him. And that mentality we have to get rid of. Politics is a profession where is governance. We must get into it. Today we may criticize Obama any amount, but he's a Harvard Law. Bush also went to Harvard Business School. Kennedy was also in Harvard. Roosevelt was in Columbia. You know, they are all educated people in politics there. So we need now, and you can't come in and expect everybody to welcome you, because the people who are already there will see you as a threat. So you've got to fight, and you must know how to fight. So my urge to young people is, have a new mindset. Take risk. Fight for the truth. Fight for justice. Don't care for consequences beyond a point. Of course, you must do calculation. Otherwise, what is the use having strength or numbers? Sometimes people say we have 1 billion people. So what? There's 1,000 goats at one place and one tiger comes. Majority is with the goats. But the goats will see the tiger and run away. And the tiger will chase them and have a lunch for the afternoon. Or strength also, without the right mindset. You go to a circus, you will see 5 Singhs, lions. And inside the cage will come a thin, wiry ringmaster and he will order the lions, get up. And they will all climb up the bench. Obey. Each one of the lions is strong enough to kill that ringmaster. And these lions are called Singhs. But they have all been pacified. Their brain has been managed from childhood. Our Manmohan Singh is also one of those Singhs, you see. A circus lion. People say this Prime Minister's chair has so much strength. Why can't you use it? The same way as the lion in the circus. He has so much strength, but why doesn't he use it? Because of the mind. So you want politics with principle, you got to take risk. You want politics with principle, you must be ready to make sacrifice. You want politics with principle, then you must educate yourself in these 6 intelligences that I talked to you about. And then we will have politics with principle as we